Hey guys, it's another Rekstarcraft cast. Today I'm going to be casting a ZVP between myself, Rekatan, and Barclayor, the Protoss. And I had a couple of games there that were the live casts. Actually, that volume's too loud. I always have it too loud. Did a couple of live casts, and I don't know, let me know in the comments. Do you want me to do more or no? Because I noticed the response to those wasn't as good as the actual casts of replays. So if no one really likes them, I won't record them. If some people like them, then I'll just upload less than I normally would. But I got like half the viewers for those as I get for these casts. So I figure this is probably what people would rather see. So for this game, it's a ZVP. And I did metagame him a bit. Barclayor and I have hit probably 10 times on the ladder since I started playing Heart of the Swarm. And by and large, he hits a pretty consistent gateway timing. So I actually have dropped to that a couple of times, just playing a little bit greedy, trying to wait until Swarm hosts pop. So I actually kind of played that pretty well, kind of played the player this time. So it was kind of an interesting game, just kind of shows what kind of dynamics start to develop when you hit the same player over and over. I'm back to 11 over pool. I don't recall if I cast one of the games or not. I think I did. I tried 15 pool for a bit, and it's just too uncomfortable for me. I don't know if I'll ever actually switch out of that. Kind of undecided whether I want to be on my view or the bird's eye view. I've always liked being on my view, but we'll see. I'll give this one a try today. So yeah, I'm back to my 11 over pool, and that's probably where I'm going to stay. Every time I go out to 15 pool, it just feels so great until it doesn't actually get past the pylon block. So for Barclayor, we're seeing a gateway before expand, and he does this. It's a pretty good expand actually. 11 over pool definitely can't shut it down. He might be vulnerable to some certain kind of blind, like for example 6 row trash, 7 row trash. That would just shut him down entirely. He would just outright lose the game. But other than that, I don't really see any problem with what he's doing, and he actually gets you scattered before he drops the Nexus. So if you are going for a 7 row trash, he's going to have a hard time knowing it. Although actually he saw an early pool from me here and he still dropped the Nexus, so it's possible he just knows from playing against me that I'm not going for any kind of cheese. I'm not sure. Given that we've played enough, it stands to reason he probably metagames me a bit as well. So dropping my hatchery at the standard time. Nothing too terribly special with my early game here. It's just going to be typical stay on 2 base and drone really hard. Mid game gets pretty cool for this game though, so I figured I'd give it a cast. The stream's been doing really well. Anyone who wants to tune back in and start watching the stream again, it's been pretty consistent. I've been every couple of days, and on Sunday we actually got up to right around 40 viewers concurrent, which is really good. Like in Heart of the Swarm land, that's really high. That's like 100 plus viewers in Wings of Liberty, so I was really happy with that. I'm hoping more and more people are going to start moving over to watching Heart of the Swarm, but right now it's just really hard to get people to come over, I guess because of the balance concerns, and they'd rather watch a game that's had 2 years of balance behind it. But honestly, Heart of the Swarm feels like a fairly well balanced product. I mean, if we compare to Wings of Liberty 3 months before release, 2.5 months I guess now before release, that was right about the point that they moved roaches over from having permanent regen and put it to burrow only. So to give some comparison, I mean those roaches were auto win units back then. So Heart of the Swarm is definitely not in the same shape as Wings of Liberty was in terms of balance testing. I'm hoping maybe they learned some lessons, like from 5-Rax Reaper and things like that occurred in 2010 and really kind of took a lot of the fun out of the game when it was first released, and I think that may have kind of hurt its momentum. It still did really well, but imagine how well it could have done if it was as polished as it is now upon release. So just some pretty standard scouting from Barclayor, just always confirming if I've got a third up. This is pretty much typical for any Protoss player. If I'm staying on my 2 base, they get a little concerned. A lot of players will just blindly expect mutas, which is great for me because I don't really ever go mutas in the matchup these days. Might start doing it here sooner or later now that they get that nice bonus on regen. I've been watching some casting or some streaming, and Idra actually, he does really well with mutas versus even Phoenix, just because he can kind of duck in and out and take advantage of that quick regen, snipe a Phoenix and then pull out, wait for the regen and snipe another one. But for now, Swarm Host, they just treat me so well. This matchup is very comfortable for me with Heart of the Swarm, and my win rate for it actually is outrageous. If it weren't for my ZVT, actually, I'd be really doing well, but my ZVT's having trouble. I might actually be moving into a Ling Baneling Muta ZVT again, now that the Medivacs don't heal for 15. The Swarm Host versus Mech feels pretty good, but versus Terran, the mobility disadvantage sometimes just doesn't really allow me much to work with. Alright, so we've got that forward pylon from Barclayor. Look back in the base, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 gateways. So going to be pretty heavy pressure here. Right now he's just poking up to see what he's up against. He saw the spines, and he saw some Zerglings popping with no speed. So that actually in and of itself makes him pretty comfortable for this push. Now what I'm doing here, kind of how I metagamed him, is I've seen this push from him so many times and lost to it, I think, twice and held it a few other times. He always does it on this map. That much I've confirmed. So I've seen it enough to know that he really does like to move out here once he's got a couple of warp cycles. And so that means he's going to generally be pushing up like this about 8:30. So my Hydras pop just in time. I do still pull the drones just so that I can pull some cute micro here. Get a little mineral walk behind him and hold position on those drones to get some free zealot kills. Lost some mining, sure, but you know, to build up that kind of momentum that can only be provided by killing off, you know, 1 or 2 warp cycles of units for free, that's really worth some lost mining in this kind of situation. Especially when you clear out most, if not all, other zealots. He had to warp in a few just now to get some buffer for those stalkers, because non-blink stalkers trade horribly with Hydras, so they really do need those zealots to really be able to do anything at all at this point. So I'm going ahead and getting that Hydra speed. I always grab that first. That does specify off creep. That's interesting. There was kind of some question as to whether or not if this was off creep only or not, and it is off creep. I thought that's what it was supposed to be, but when you check the tooltip after the upgrade's finished, it still shows in parentheses an advantage over the on creep movement speed. So I'm not sure if that's an issue with the tooltip here or what the deal is, but I've kind of been under the impression after checking that tooltip that they got a bonus both on and off creep. But generally, if I know I'm going to be moving across the map, you'll always want to get the movement speed before you get the grooved spines, even if it does help them trade a little better with stalkers. They already do that pretty well anyways, and move speed still lets them close quicker. So at this point, just kind of getting enough of a build up while I continue to poke here, see if I can get some decent trades. You know, a couple free stalkers, get that pylon whittled down a bit. Not too great of micro here. Should be shuffling these Hydras back, but getting a little lazy with that. Once I get enough Hydras built up here, I'm going to go ahead and push and just see how much contain I can establish. I mean, I already have his both potential thirds blocked, so this is the point that I'm really feeling great about 2 base versus 2 base in this kind of situation, because I'm already getting a tech advantage established. He's still at 0-0, I'm still at 0-0, and I've got my 1-1 starting here soon, I believe. Doesn't look like I started it yet, but this is usually around the time I grab it. But especially with those swarm hosts, that's where that tech advantage really starts to kick in. There's no way gateway units are going to hold versus swarm hosts. So once you get that locust life speed, or life timing, which I haven't started yet. If I remember it, I actually clicked it and didn't have enough resources at the time, so I had a bit of a whoops there. I'm trying to make less and less of those mistakes, though, because that is one of those critical upgrades that you can't really use the unit without. The locusts don't live long enough to even do any damage. I get that started now, so that's good. I'll switch this over to the production tab, since a lot of people prefer that. Right now I'm a little behind on economy, but again, with that unit efficiency, it's not really a concern. What do we have for units lost so far? I'm already a little bit ahead, but we're going to see that's going to be the story for the rest of the game, and it's going to be a lot more than a little bit here soon. If I remember it, actually, for this game, we looked at the replay after the game on the stream, and it was like a 10-to-1 units lost. I don't know if that was exactly... if this was the game I'm thinking of, but this one was pretty efficient too, so we'll get to see something fun with that. Go ahead and take my third, and I'm really not concerned about the fact that I'm taking my third at the same time as him. That's just fine. ZVP now, I think, at least if you're going Swarm Host style, you're going to be able to match them on base count and always do pretty well as long as your micro is where it needs to be and you're multitasking. So, you know, for this... it's just because these swarm hosts trade so cost effectively. You know, Yeah, in a perfect world, I'd love to be up to 4 base gas at the very least. Don't necessarily need the minerals from it, but 8 geysers is going to really be great for my Viper transition. But it's not mandatory. And especially in a situation like this where I'd rather have my resources going to aggression and hopefully some third denial, this is kind of where I prefer to spend my money. So one thing I can really improve here, and I don't know if I have my Overlord speed yet or not. Let's take a quick look. I do have my Overlord speed. I should have Overlords across here getting creep spread, and I do get them moving over here soon when I pull my Queens. I always like to pull Queens here at a certain point. It's going to provide that extra necessary buffer if they try to break out. Also, once I get the Overlords across the map, start dropping creep here towards the front of his base, I can go ahead and just block him off with creep and really restrict his mobility when he tries to push out. So the Queens coming across really helps. Here comes those Overlords. They're a little late, but at least I recognize it and get that fixed. Love having just a couple Overlords near my swarm hosts at all times. These actually should be on follow on my swarm hosts. It's going to help because you can't actually uproot those locusts. Clean up a zealot there, being pesky. You can't actually uproot the locusts until the swarm, uproot the swarm hosts until the locusts have gone ahead and passed. So, for example, these locusts in the back, they're blocking the swarm host in the front, and if he's pulling up to engage, I need to retreat as quickly as possible. So having a few Overlords, just following, yeah, there you go, like that, following your Overlords, or following your swarm host, that's going to do you a world of good, because they're going to drop creep right over the swarm host like they're about to here, and you go ahead and burrow up, and that means those locusts in the back, they're going to go ahead and push forward quicker than the rest, and see that? They scooted up, and now my swarm host in the front can move just a half second quicker maybe, and sometimes that's the difference between losing a couple swarm hosts and losing nothing at all. So there's kind of one of many tips I'm going to start putting together here. I'm going to actually, oh, here we go, I'm going to mention that later. Nice blink forward on the part of Barclayor, but this is one of those situations where I was already prepared for that. So he traded a Colossus, a couple Stalkers, and a Zealot for one Swarm Host. That's just fine. So we take a look at the units lost. It's already 3,200 to 999. So it's already starting to really kick in with that efficiency. He's actually mining more than me, but with this kind of resource efficiency, that's not a concern. In fact, I want less resources tied up in drones anyways, so that I have a larger army. With this high swarm host count, I need the supply for supporting units. So again, he blinks up, tries to get some aggression going, but again, he's walking into another locust spawn. It's going to take some really careful timing on the part of Protoss player as this game starts to develop for them to really understand when they're able to actually commit to some aggression. Because these locusts, if they walk into it too quickly, they're going to go ahead and just take a ton of free damage. Now, with that swarm host moving up, that was actually a case of a bad rally. When you're control grouping your eggs, it can be kind of a tricky thing to keep track of, because you rally the eggs for the new swarm hosts at the same time as you rally your locust spawning, and that can result in your swarm host just moving straight into the enemy. So it's kind of one of the many multitasking challenges with swarm host. Oh, anyways, what I was going to say is I'm starting to kind of get some tips and tricks in mind for what you can do with swarm hosts to really make the most of them, since there's been so much, kind of, complaining and just outright, sometimes just calling for a complete overhaul of the unit with regard to swarm hosts. So I'm hoping by the time Heart of the Swarm comes out, as long as this unit doesn't get fundamentally changed in some way where its core functionality is completely different, I'm going to release a fairly comprehensive guide to help get people up to speed on how to properly use these units, because this is just such a fun unit to use. So we've got Barclayor really pushing out, and at this point I'm baiting him. I needed to buy some time because he cleaned up that last locust spawn real quickly. But here's where things get really fun. Look at that. Get that nice, beautiful flank from those locusts. Got plenty of units in front still. He's going to go ahead and retreat out the side, which is absolutely the best course for him to take. But keep in mind, this also, since he does not currently have a mothership core with him, he's in a bit of trouble, because now he's not going to get back in time for these before these swarm hosts spawn. So I'm going to get some more damage here. I don't believe I actually get any of his colossi, but that's okay. Now, one minor improvement I'm looking to make, because as people probably know, I really don't like infestors these days because they were so overused for a while. But imagine just 1 or 2 infestors on a move command following my swarm hosts around. It's going to give me an added layer of defense. If he pushes out, I can fungal units in front to buy some time. And in a situation like that, I could have gotten a beautiful fungal on 4 or 5 colossi, and that would have ended the game right then and there. and all it takes is just 1 or 2 infestors following these swarm hosts around. So for 2 to 4 supply, I really can't complain about that. I don't even have to invest in pathogen glands for that small of an investment. So it's going to be a change I'll be making more and more here as I continue to use swarm hosts. So at this point, I'm just trying to kind of keep him in a situation where he needs to be in 2 places at once, and that's not something Protoss ever does well. So just kind of juggle the swarm host, try and swap the positioning of my Hydras versus my swarm hosts as often as possible, so that he can't really predict which direction the locusts are going to come from. Depending on how much success a push has at the top, I might then switch the swarm hosts over to the bottom and continue repeating that process until eventually he's just lost too much to keep up. At this point, we're at 11,500 on the Protoss losses to my only 4,300, 4,399 on Zerg losses. So, oh, bit of a right click there on the rocks. Whoops. So he gets some free cleanup on this spawn. Pretty good blink micro for Barclayor. And this is actually a really good response to Locust I've found. Is just some really strong blink micro. I've seen a couple other Protoss players do it too. Ultimately, though, it's actually I haven't really seen anyone take it to the point where they can just keep up and cost-effectively trade with the swarm host. Just because if they make one misclick on that blink micro, then they lose a stalker, and nobody's perfect. So he's continuing to try to blink back. I'm up to 200 supply exactly now. Go ahead and max out on some roaches since I'm Hydra heavy here and need some buffer. Notice I've had my queens pulled for quite some time. I notice he's pushing out here, so what I do is I shuffle back my swarm host to a new position, just basically read his positioning. At that point I noticed he was really aggressively trying to gain some ground against the locust, so it was highly likely he was going to try and move out. He gets a move command here accidentally, it looks like, and goes ahead and walks into the locust, which that's that one mistake is all it takes, and that's enough where he's going to be too far behind to really be able to keep up anymore. He's not going to have any more stalkers to buffer for those colossi. Oh yeah, this game, yeah, he calls it a lag spike. I completely believe it. Heart of the Swarm has been really problematic for laggy servers. But I mean, again, in this situation, we were now 4 base, you know, well mined consistently, or not consistent, well saturated, but I've been well established on 4 base for a while now. And I've even got some Vipers in the back that I wasn't utilizing, so that's bad on me. They already had a chance to consume and everything, so they should have been up front. And otherwise, though, this was kind of a nail-in-the-coffin situation. By that point, he just wasn't able to really keep up. Even before that misclick, he was about 50 supply down, and I also was out mining him as his natural was now mining out, and so there you have it. So that's it for this one. Let me know what kind of games you guys would like to see. If you want to see more ZVZ, ZVP, ZVT, just let me know. Or even if you want to see specific compositions, I'll see if I can play some of them and get something fun for you guys. Also, I'm wanting to bring back casting for other people's games, kind of like I first started doing. Give some tips and cast games any level, bronze to masters. I'm perfectly happy to cast any level of game. So if you want to submit a replay